Well, good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world today. This is our second try on this interview this morning. Has a few technical issues there, but we're very happy to have Paul Quinton back with us today in the first of our deep dive series. So, as everybody knows, we have our speakers that come through the Wellness Lifestyle Conference to share their wonderful wisdom with us, as well as the interviews where you get to hear about how our speakers have gotten from point A to B. But we really hope that these interviews will provide you a new perspective on the work that our speakers actually do as well. So today we are doing a deep dive on the alignment modality, and Paul has let me know that he also has two channeled messages that he would like to share with us. So let's dive right in. Paul, welcome.
Thank you, Stephen. Nice to be back on.
Indeed, indeed. So, okay, Paul, as I said in the intro, we're wanting to go a little bit deeper into this alignment modality and what it means for people and how they can achieve that. But maybe we should start off with what we should be thinking or looking at focusing on right here, right now. Because I know so many people, my clients, myself included, when we look at everything that's going on in the world, it's kind of like, where do we even look? Should we be focusing on ourselves? Should we be focusing on the collective? Are we focusing on our spiritual well-being? Are we focusing on our physical? What is the sense that you're getting in terms of how we can best align ourselves with the highest good?
Okay, that's great. Now, when people say, "Oh, how can I change? I'm just one person. How can I help the world?" And what that happens is it's because you believe, and we're taught on this planet that everything is outside of ourselves, that to achieve, we have to go outward. Now, obviously, it's a mirror universe. So our physical world cannot exist without an invisible world. And it's also on a macro level. So everything that we create is our physical reality, and that's on our individual selves. So a lot of people get very empowered and start to feel that truth when they understand that to affect change on the planet, everyone has that power. Because a lot of people think, well, I need to go and join an organization. I need to go and do a rally. I need to grab all this money and people, boom, 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 boom. That works on some level, but the real power is grounding consciousness into your own body, because everything works at the cellular level. So if you are holding more frequency of light, everyone around you, you will start to affect. And that is how the spirit or universal directive wants us to grow. What they want us to do is ground that light into ourselves. Then we affect change on the ground. So everything has that power. So the more that you're working on yourselves, the more you're becoming conscious of the millions of markers every day that are warning you, showing you what's going on, what you need to do. But we have this tunnel vision, you see. So we have to open up that tunnel vision, start seeing peripherally what's going on. Now, even me saying this, people go, well, how do I do that? How do I do that? How do I do that? Intention alone is the foundation of all outcomes in all universes. We have to remember that the collective consciousness is actually our soul. And our soul is an aspect of many different frequencies of feelings through many dimensions and realities. So what's happening is if you are starting to process your emotional body without fear, without holding on to it, what you're actually doing is you're changing the vibration in the cells, because consciousness is electric and it will come into the body. And what happens if you've got a clogged emotional body that's quite dense, as we call magnetic, that energy gets stuck in the body. And now this is what causes inflammation, arthritis. It can blow out the skeletal system. Worst cases, it can start to break bones. So what we have to do is process the emotional body, which means going in and feeling what needs to come up, allowing what needs to come up in the moment, and not judging that experience. Because if we start to judge what's going on and we hold on to the story, then it doesn't allow consciousness to come through the planet. Now, this is a special era of time now, because we have been given a great gift. We are basically, all we have to do to heal is surrender. Now, in the olden days, we'd have to go and meditate for weeks on end. We'd have to do all these exercises. Be very much a mental concept. No, it doesn't work that way. What we have to do is we need to surrender to the feeling in the moment. And what happens is the soul or conscious will come into the body and start transforming. Because we only work with feelings now. We don't work with belief systems anymore. Because often if you work with a belief system, and I think I said this in the first interview, that the emotional energy or the emotional charge created from the experience gets lodged into the body. Now, you can change the belief system, but it's going to come back if that emotional energy isn't felt and acknowledged. So all feelings need is space to do it in. That's all transformation needs. You give it space. You create this illusion in your mind of space, and you just feel that feeling. Now, obviously, I teach this in my healing stuff. But the concept is observation, surrender, and imagination. Because if you imagine something and there's no fear or doubt, that image you've put into action must manifest under universal law. And this is where our greatest power, where we hold our greatest power. And this is why they were saying Einstein was going mad in the last 10 years, because he was talking about imagination, and he was talking about the frequency of love. He talked about the magnetics of planets, and he explained a lot. And what you're seeing now is a lot of that science is actually, science and spirituality or the esoteric is the same consciousness.
Yes.
So what we're doing now is that to gain anything, regardless if it's science or spirituality, by observation through imagination, you will then start to download everything that's coming into the planet, because everything that's created here comes from the unseen anyway. So we just have to become receptive, you see. Now what's happened is our society is full of misinformation. So the cell division, and of course if the cells are divided, they can't bring the light in. And then, of course, if polarity is not allowed to swing, the light cannot ground into the cell, and then we can't download that light into the body. And this is what's happening. This is why people are so confused at the moment.
So I want to see if I'm hearing you correctly, because it's interesting to me that this is something that has come up for me a lot in the last 72 hours, especially around emotions, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Where not only am I thinking about it in my meditation, where that is the thought that's coming up around emotions, but also a lot of my friends are bringing up stuff that they're learning in their meditations, and they're going, oh, I'm noticing that I really need to learn to not identify with the emotion, but rather let it come through, feel it, and let it go. So I guess what I'm trying to ask is, if I'm getting this correctly, in order for that light to really come in, we have to create space within the body. And the only way to do that is to let go of any trapped emotions that we have not felt. We have not allowed ourselves to experience. Because I know for myself, especially having grown up in corporate, right, there was a sort of rule that if things got really difficult or really hard and you were about to have a mental breakdown, you would not do that at the office, right? That was just not, you would man up. And yes, I know that is not politically correct to say anymore, but you would man up and you would do what you needed to do. And if you had to go home and cry in your shower for 2 hours, that was perfectly fine as long as nobody saw it.
Yes.
But as a result of that, you're suppressing so much all the time that you're just not allowing yourself to feel, that you do feel dense, you feel heavy, because there's all this repressed stress and trauma that you're just not dealing with. So coming back to my question, and then I'll hand it back to you, is that what you're saying? We have to release all of those old emotional blockages that we've not dealt with in order for us to actually align. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah. So what's happening is the directive is now that if you look at the divine algorithm, the 1 and 0, what's happening now is the actual divine algorithm is now reawakening in our DNA, because Source has put out a call of a return home. So we don't need to be in the 3D experience anymore, in duality, in the illusion. So what's happening is that algorithm, that original genetic algorithm, is awakening in human consciousness, and this is what's pushing us forward at the evolutionary rate that we're at. And what's happened is the heart chakra is closed down. Now, the heart chakra, this is why people turn on each other. This is why families turn on each other. And Spirit said, the man walking down the street with a closed heart is a very, very dangerous man, because this is what causes wars. This is what causes all of the conflict on this planet. Now, if the heart chakra is closed, the spirit, which is our highest form of consciousness, cannot ground in the body. And then, of course, you can't have soul realization, because the soul is also an aspect of the spirit consciousness. So what's happening, if your heart is closed down, then the feeling body is not active, which is the emotional body. Now, that has to be active first, which is the feelings, the emotions. And if they're not active, because they have to also be active in the physical body, because otherwise the physical body won't work. And this is why people get disease. So when the feelings and the physical body come into alignment, the meridian system, which is the blueprint of the physical body, will start to work properly, and then the heart chakra can open. So basically what that means is that the emotional body has to allow oscillation to swing. So the reason why disease manifests is because you get unilateral emotional holds within an organ, for example, like liver. So if that's not swinging, you can't get oscillation, and it doesn't allow the light to come back into the cells of the liver. So this is really about when a feeling or emotion comes up, often we'll try to judge it. We'll start judging the people that's involved with it. Or we'll try and get into the story. But if we breathe into it as it's coming up, and just breathe, and then sort of have that illusion of separation, observing it at a distance, and you just create like a color in your mind, and you just see the imagination. That space alone, that's how simple it is. Consciousness will come in and start shifting that emotion. And that's what I was saying. It's much easier for us now. All we need to do, and that's what I meant by surrender. It's a very, very simple process. Right. But the mind thinks it's too simple, and it judges that experience. How can that work? It's too easy. It's too simple. But that's the gift that we've been given.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I literally was just thinking that, but that can't be right. That's way too easy. It can't just be that, because I have a blocked heart chakra. I know that.
Yeah.
It's something that I've been trying to work on for a very long time.
Yeah.
And it's actually started to manifest physical symptoms in my body.
Yeah.
Where I have a lot of issues with heart rate and lung issues as well. And the doctors can't find anything wrong. They're like, there's nothing wrong that we can see, but try this medication, try that medication. And in my head, I'm going, yeah, you can't find anything wrong because it's a blocked heart chakra and you don't have a test for that. But it's very interesting that what you're actually saying is literally just when you start to feel through all those blockages, and I know that I'm holding on to certain resentments, and I've been working on letting them go, but because of how deep rooted they are, it's easier said than done, right? Because we form an attachment. And this is something else that I said to my friend actually this morning. We were discussing on the way back from gym, and he was saying how he's a Christian mystic.
Okay.
And one of the books that he was reading was talking about allow the feeling to rise, accept it, and then release it. And I said to him, yes, because I noticed that, and somebody else brought this up on one of the Instagram people that I follow. She said in her video, isn't it interesting that when there's a positive emotion, we'll say things like, oh, I'm feeling so happy today, or I'm feeling really great, right? We're not attached, we're not identifying with that emotion. But let it be negative, and suddenly it becomes, I am angry, I am sad.
Yeah.
We actually identify with the emotion and then we hang on to it. And it's the same thing when there's resentment. You become resentment. You become that emotion. And then it becomes, or actually, let me ask, because this is my experience, it then forms part of my identity, which is why it's so difficult for me to then release it, because I'm essentially killing off a part of myself.
Yeah.
I just kind of realized that now, but yeah.
So we know it at the moment.
Yeah. But I do want to come back to something else you said at the outset of this part of our discussion. You were saying that Source is essentially saying we no longer have to live in the third dimension. we're able to level up. Now, I want to challenge you a little bit on that, mainly because I want to understand the reasoning behind what you're saying and what maybe get a little bit deeper on it. Because you mentioned in our interview that one of the things that's coming through from your channel messages is we are supposed to also enjoy the physical.
Yes. Yeah.
So my question is, how do we do that if we are evolving into the fifth dimension?
Okay. So firstly, now this is going to annoy some people, but we're not actually going into the fifth dimension.
Okay.
No, well, some people I don't get on this subject, but the fact that you mentioned it now, some people like to perceive it as the fifth. Like Spirit has said to me clearly, well, because we can't bypass. What happened to the fourth dimension? Why does everyone keep missing the fourth dimension? This is what I don't understand, because everyone thinks we're going to this fifth, but we can't.
I asked the same question actually, so thank you for raising that.
Yeah, this is a new age movement hype again, and it's unfortunately it's part of that misinformation, because there's no way we can move through a whole dimensional reality. We just can't. We can have thousands of lives in the 4D. Now, also, what Spirit don't want us to do is talking about 3, 4, and 5D. What they're saying is, and I said this to Stephen last time, is that we are having spiritual realization whilst in a physical body. They don't want us to be spiritual. We're already spiritual. They want us to be human and have spiritual realization whilst in the physical body. Now, what's happening, if you want to look at it from a 4, 5D perspective, is, look, a lot of the inner earth beings are 4D reality. So they have the ability to move in and out of physicality, heightened psychic awareness, heightened technology, and all the rest of it. Now, a lot of people speak about that. I don't get into it. But at the end of the day, that they are a consciousness that we're evolving into. So what will still be 3D in a sense, will still be physical, but we'll have fourth density abilities, which is telepathy, being able to heal ourselves, being able to access multidimensionality, being able to see the unseen, having more ET contact on a conscious level. So everything just opens. So that is actually part of the spiritual realization whilst in a physical body. So I should have maybe have worded the 3D. We're not actually leaving 3D per se, because we're still going to be here. But what Spirit have also said is we're sort of, they said it to me like this. They said there's a realm of consciousness around us. And the alignment modality and the work that they've given us to teach allows us to evolve into that realm that already sits around us energetically. Now, that realm was already here for a long time before we incarnated. And what we're having to do to acknowledge that realm is process the emotional body and our ancestral line. That's the two directives for right now. Is process
in order to move forward, is what you're saying.
Exactly. And then what will happen, because I've already had people in alignment modality, they're already having multidimensional experiences. They're already seeing things. They're seeing spirit at night. They're seeing movement. Their psychic awareness is over. So that's what's happening. You're just more heightenedly aware here. So if you want to call that 4D, 5D, it doesn't really matter. But at the moment, it's about waking up psychically. And that's what's actually happening. And because we're already these powerful beings, we're just conditioned. So all we're doing is transferring from conditioning to unconditioning, transforming human conditioning.
Now that is, sorry, please continue.
Yeah, no, go on, please. Yeah, that's fine for me.
I was just going to say that is actually so beautiful, because going back to my friend who, the Christian mystic.
Yes.
He doesn't like anything around psychic abilities or anything like that, right? So his experiences he refers to as spirituality, and that's in his modality, and I respect and I understand.
Yeah, fine, yeah.
But what's so interesting is a lot of the techniques that he uses and the meditations that he uses are very similar to some of the Hermetic principles and techniques that I utilize in my practice.
There you go.
And when he started like really dedicating himself to his practice, I didn't say anything to him, but I was like, his abilities are going to start opening up. And eventually I mentioned it to him, like, that's going to start happening. And he goes, no, it never would. Like there's nothing like that in my bloodline. And besides, I'm just never going to have that kind of situation. And lo and behold, a couple of weeks later, he's like, I'm getting the weirdest sensations. And I go, what kind of sensations are you getting? He goes, I'll be getting these weird emotional surges, but I know they're not mine. I'm like, oh, that's empathy. Yeah. You're picking up on someone in your vicinity. He's like, no, cannot be, can't be. I'm like, it is. You're doing the work. You're releasing the emotional trauma. You're clearing your energetic body. It's allowing your abilities to rise.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really interesting that you're saying that that's exactly what the directive is that we need to do. Clear those emotional blockages in order to move forward.
Yeah.
But then that brings up the next question on something you just said, because you said the second thing is clearing the ancestral line.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do I phrase this? So from a new age perspective, of course, a lot of people would say, but the ancestors have moved on to the next plane, so they're doing their work there. We don't need to do anything for them or anything like that. All we need to do is clear any trauma that we are experiencing as a result of ancestral issues. Is that what you are essentially referring to, or is it more in depth than that?
Well, first, it's a bit more in depth because firstly, the ancestors are an aspect of our own consciousness. So if you're going to leave them, you're leaving yourself. Right? That's number one. We're all collective. So that bloodline are aspects of your own soul as well. Now, it's a bit hard to sort of try and work. The problem is we're still working in this individual. We're in individuals, but we're not collective. So the ancestors know. When you pass over, you evolve like hardly at all. You cannot really evolve. You only evolve when you're in the physical. So actually, the physical 3D human being holds tremendous power. And I've been doing ancestral healing for 20, 30 years, and the amazing, it's incredible, like how many souls you can heal just within 10 minutes of doing a certain exercise. Because what's happening is that collective energy of say, a closed down heart, or there may be a certain disease imprint, or there are people that have just never been able to speak their truth. So when you go into the human, and you'll see, and you look behind them, and you have sometimes hundreds of different souls all waiting to heal through that physical person. So actually, no, it's actually the opposite. We have to take responsibility now, because we're also having to look at the planet needs to evolve. We need to move on everyone else. And when you become a light worker and you start to work at that level, you see that you're responsible for everyone. Now, it's not like you have to put all your energy out every day. All you need to do is you need to have that idea in your head that I'm not just healing my one-on-one or people on my workshop. I'm healing multidimensional aspects of everyone's consciousness. And that takes on a whole different way of thinking. And when you start to elevate your consciousness to that way of healing, you start to bring a lot more in, because you've put your receptor cells out that I'm ready now to take the next stage. So actually, Spirit is very, very clear that a lot of the problems on the planet is because a lot of the ancestral lines still blocked. And if you look at the American Indians, and that they do it in a bit more in a sort of dramatic way, where they will, like, I'm carrying all the pain of my ancestors, and they live that pain. That's not what we really need to do. What we need to do is just acknowledge it. We know it's there. We're carrying aspects of that as well. And every time, 9 times out of 10, probably more than that, you'll talk to someone, and then you go, right, well, this is going on with your ancestral line. A lot of people know about their great-grandfathers, etc., or great-grandmothers, and they go, boom, exactly. We've had this, and this, and this. So those patterns in that ancestral line keep repeating. So it's also responsible for us to do it energetically, so you don't keep passing that thread of consciousness through the earth plane. And it's not about the genetics, because the genetics can be changed by environment, by thinking, by feelings. So it's not this whole genetic game. And Bruce Lipton speaks about that. It's very good. He sort of changed that with the epigenics. So we're not caught into that. But what we're doing is we're clearing the morphogenic or energetic imprints in the ancestral DNA. So
that is a very interesting topic for me, actually. Something that I've always been interested in. I've always thought of it from the physical perspective of the genetics, but it's interesting that it actually is more of a consciousness energetic imprint that is carried through, which makes sense. Because I'll often, especially when I was a lot younger, I would, say to people, and bearing in mind that I grew up Jehovah's Witness, so you would be very careful about how you would phrase certain things around this kind of topic.
Absolutely.
But the conversation that we would have would be very much along the lines of, there's certain things that you just know that it's not instinct, but you know that you know it because it was something that your great-grandfather or great-grandmother knew how to do, etc., and somehow that passed down. Case in point, my parents could never understand. I could pick up a piece of blue tack or clay, and as a child, I mean 4 or 5 years old, and sculpt the most incredible things. Never been to an art class, can't draw to save my life.
Yeah.
But yet I can sculpt perfectly without any training. My hands know what to do.
Amazing. Yeah.
And it's like, well, there has to be something somewhere in the genetic line that has brought that forward, because either that or a past life. But yeah, that's a story for another time.
Yeah.
But okay.
Yeah. Can I just quickly one thing? So, for example, then this is the problem with the medical profession. It creates so much fear. So they say, yeah, you've got a history of heart disease. So often the people in the family go, oh, I'm going to, I'll potentially get heart disease now. That's probably going to happen. But what they don't ask, don't get inquisitive. And again, Einstein, be inquisitive. Inquisitiveness breaks the energy. So why have they got heart disease? I'll tell you why they've got heart disease. Because for generations, that family line has never spoken their truth. They've never, ever allowed to speak from their heart. They've always spoken from their ego. So right there, right then, you go, right, well, I'm going to speak from my heart. I'm going to open up, and I'm going to be honest with my feelings. You're not going to get heart disease. Right there and then, you've already shifted it. Now, that's just a basic example. There'll be more to it. But the point is about being inquisitive. So you don't have to fall under this spell that, oh, my grandfather got it, I'm going to get it. That's a load of rubbish. And that's why Bruce Lipton is a great pioneer, because he's bridging this consciousness. He's bridging that with real science. And explaining that it's all down to your thinking, it's all down to your environment, and the genetics actually live in the membrane of the cell, not in the nucleus, like modern medicine has said. So so the brain is the membrane. And the membrane is what receives stimuli from the outside world.
Right.
So of course you change it right there and then. He explained it in very simple terms. It's amazing.
Well, I'd like to just say, for right off the bat, after you shared that resonated so deeply with me, because I have huge issues in my family health.
Right. Okay.
Diabetes, heart issues, a few other things as well. And for that reason, I've always said, well, that's one of the reasons, but I've always said I'll never have children because I'm not passing that on. And when you said that, like heart disease specifically, because that's quite prominent in my family, and when you said it's not speaking their truth, I immediately went, that is so true, because that was always the issue. Everyone in my family has always done what they're supposed to. They've done what society has said they're supposed to do. They've done what research has said they're supposed to do, what their family has said, etc. They've lived the good life, right, that they're supposed to live. But yet I know, and I think that's one of the reasons why I've always had such issues with my family, is I know them deeper than that, and I can see that that's not their truth. They're not living their truth, and they're being, I won't say hypocritical, that's the wrong word, but they're not being brave enough to be and exist. So that's really beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that, because that's something that I will need to work on and introduce into my family a little bit more. But yes. Moving along swiftly and changing gears very slightly, onto our next big question. Everybody knows that we are, and I hate this term, I actually heard on a reality show the other day, like, if I hear the term lockdown, unprecedented times, or curbside pickup one more time, I'm going to scream. And I'm like, I feel you on that.
My one's unprecedented times. I'm like, that's my word. I can't stand it.
Whenever I hear unprecedented times, I'm like, oh. Is it though? Is it unprecedented? We just had the Spanish flu, guys. It was a few decades ago. Like,
exactly.
not that long ago.
Yeah.
But to be fair, I mean, this has been a really stressful time. I think more so simply because of, and I always bring this up. I say, when people ask me, what is my take on the pandemic?
Right.
And I go, look, I have looked at the numbers, I've looked at the science, as everybody else has. And in my mind, it is a flu, much like other flus are. We've had SARS, we've had MERS, we've had COVID variants before. Okay, this is not the first rodeo.
Yeah.
The difference here is that it's so much more communicable. And that's, me, in my mind, makes it a lot more deadly, because a normal flu or cold is not as easily transmissible as this seems to be. So I bring that up because now you look at the world over the last 2 years, and this timeline has become one of incredible stress on two fronts. One, stress from just the collective of, you can't leave your house, you can't see your family, you can't do this, you can't do that, and also just fear.
Yeah.
But then the flip side of that stress that I see a lot of, that I see being really tough for people to navigate, is they are now having to actually spend time with themselves.
Yeah.
And because they're having to spend time with themselves, they're actually having to ask themselves really difficult questions like, what do I want to do with my life? Because before, it was just the usual: get up in the morning, drive to work. You've got noise constantly. It's the traffic, it's hooting, it's the radio. You get to the office, it's grab a cup of coffee. You've got your colleagues, get to the gym over lunch break, commute home, make dinner, see to the kids, get everybody sorted. There was never any brain time to sit and be with yourself. And that has now, I see, created a huge amount of stress in humans on the individual side of things.
Yeah.
So that, then I say all of that to bring us to the big question, which is, how do we navigate this specific timeline that we seem to be on?
Yes, well, that's a big question, isn't it? So, and let's try and keep this in the simple terms. Look, at the end of the day, as you said, people have to ask the right questions. They have to start questioning themselves. Ultimately, this was a great gift. Now, light and dark is the same energy. It's just different ends of the spectrum. So, it's always in loving service. So whenever a shadow agenda is put out, the light is going to benefit. Absolutely. Because it's actually, what's happening now is there's a couple of things. We have to actually now, everyone that sort of followed blindly the governments and control systems and all the rest of it, even they are questioning it. They said there's something fundamentally wrong here. What was meant to be happening from the light's perspective is people were meant to see through the lies and the propaganda. They were meant to start need to start questioning. Again, Einstein's quote, blind belief in authority is the greatest enemy of truth. And unfortunately, that's the majority of the planet. So what's happening on the conscious level is human beings were meant to start waking up and start taking more sovereignty back of their own body, of their own timeline, which is why staying and working from home now is great, because you've got a better quality of life. You've got more time with the children. It comes back to a little bit more of the community, because the directive is that we're moving back into collective, but on a physical level, more community. They want human beings to start interacting again at that deeper level, because we've been so caught up in the base chakra, in fear and survival mode. And this is what Brexit was all about, was to stimulate the base chakra, get people into more fear. Again, COVID did the same thing.
Right.
So they're trying to release these old patterns in human consciousness, but they can't step in and save us, because human beings have to take responsibility for their own experience. So what we're trying to do now is recalibrate energetically. And what the joke was from Spirit is that we're going to take away your shopping trips and your diary entries again, which was what the second wave was about, because people weren't listening. and it was like, and they said, because when everyone went back out again, Doré said after 6 months, and that will be taking us up to December, they're all going to go, and then they're going to hit a wall again and go, there's something not right. And they said, you can't go back to your old scripts. The world is different now. So how do you navigate? You have to be with your own feelings. You have to trust, and you have to be honest with yourself and say, what's not working? And we're also in a cycle now. This is a cycle 2021. So we're changing so that you have to break up the old ways. So if it's moving house, moving job, getting out of relationships that you're not involved in, getting out of old habits and patterns, because as soon as you break that state, the soul can bring so much more energy and consciousness into your body. So just look around. What do I need to change in my life right now? Do I need to move? Just start acting on those feelings. Don't get into the fear, because it's only the fear in the mind that stops you. So it's really about having, giving yourself time and space to allow yourself to feel what the soul wants to do. Because what's actually happening now is that all souls on the planet are being asked to reintegrate with the soul energy and come out of the ego, the mind concept of life, because it just doesn't serve us anymore. And this is why the planet is in such a mess, is because we're trying to, when something happens to us, we react and we're constantly blaming the person that created that experience with us. But what we don't realize, and this is what karma is, what we call karma, is actually if an experience or an energy is not allowed to move through the body, which means having to be a clear vessel, what happens is it magnetizes into the body. So that's what we call karma. So it might go into the liver, for example. It might be an unresolved anger. So certain things always happen. You always create this anger. If you don't allow that energy to move through your body, it will magnetize in one area. And then what will happen is the soul will draw karma experiences to wake up that blocked energy. So then we start getting reactive. Go, oh, well, that's happening again. But actually, it's not karma. It's the magnetics. So what the soul is saying, hey, I'm going to keep creating this situation until you listen.
Yes.
So you are constantly creating what you believe is karma, but it's not. It's just there to get your attention to something that you have not listened to or have denied through the mind. So it's about being conscious. So what you need to do is you also need to wake up in the morning, and I give a soul exercise to people, and then you sit and you allow the intention of the soul to come through you. Now, the mind is going to have a lot of difficulty with this, because again, this is all part of that surrender process. But if you set that intention in the day, whatever I need to transform today, whatever you need me to do through this period of time, allow it to happen. And again, it's about just setting the intention, because you don't know. We're operating on a very, very small percentage of consciousness, and we don't know what's going on. We're so stuck in the illusion. We forgot that we are non-physical beings. So we just have to surrender, and the soul will start to project things. So you'll start meeting new people. You'll go, oh, actually now, and you'll start to get these strong feelings like, that does not work for me anymore. I'm going to change that. So you have to listen to the feelings. So the hard part is getting into that process of letting go and trusting. That's the hard part. But as soon as you just let go and set that intention in the morning and just trust, and it's a very unconscious thing. It's very unconscious. The world will miraculously start to change around the frequency of the soul's intention. It has a contract. It knows what it wants to do. The reason psychics can pick up, when they do cards, right? They go, right, I'm going to see here in 10 years and stuff. Do you know what they're picking up on? They're picking up on the soul contract. That's what they're seeing. They're seeing, because that script is already written. So the soul says at 60, you're going to be doing this. This is our intention. So then the psychic will pick up, oh, I can see that at 60, you're going to do this. It's not like they're seeing in the future. They're reading that. So, so what they're trying to do is come us back into that contract. So again, it's just a very simple thing, but we have to just trust, because everyone actually has feelings now. Most people have feelings deep down that are coming up, going, actually, no, I shouldn't be doing that anymore. But because it's overriding, they're still going out into their old scripts, and this is why it's not serving us anymore. So yeah, it's a complex question, but
it is, and especially because one of the things that you led with was the only way to really navigate this, or what the collective wants, is for humans individually to reclaim their sovereignty.
Yeah.
And I say that is complicated because this is something that I argue a little bit with Spirit about, as well as my friends and clients as too. Because I often will just say, look, the reason that the planet is in the states it is in today is because humans don't want to reclaim their power. They don't want to reclaim their sovereignty. They like that somebody else does everything for them.
Yeah.
And I pointed out quite blankly to them, because I go, think about it. From young, you are trained to look to a leader, whether that's your teacher at school or your principal or your coach. Then it's your boss at work, the government that you live under. And then you get into the spiritual side of the spectrum, and most religion will be like, no, just leave it to God. God will handle everything for you.
Yeah.
And that to me is very disempowering. And I'm going, let's take it from the top down. God, the universe, spirit, whatever you want to call it, has endowed you with incredible levels of power and ability. Why should they have to do anything further for you when you've already got all of this power?
Yeah.
But I guess I say all of that because, and I might be answering my own question here, but how do we get people to accept that they not only can, but want to embrace their own sovereignty again? Is it that sitting, listening to their soul? Is that what they need to start doing?
Yeah, basically, because look, there's two things, two questions that have always plagued humanity, and that's it's the fear of who I will become if I go into self-inquiry, and the person I've always wanted to be. So we run from that fear in the mind of who we want to be, and we run towards the hope of who we can become. And this again is that outward projection. And this is where it's been fundamentally wrong. As soon as you idolize a god or a figurehead, you are giving your power away. That's it, 100%, 100%. We are all aspects of the creator. So we are in union with each other. Now, on this planet, there's a lot of souls that are stuck here that should not be on this planet. Spirit has been very clear. Now, not all souls are created at the same time. Depending on the consciousness of the divine feminine, divine masculine, when they're creating souls, they are in conflict sometimes. And there's been a batch of souls where they were in a lot of conflict, and these souls were then fused with that conflict. And what's happened is I'm doing some work on this at the moment. We're trying to get these souls off the planet, because what's happening is if you're karmically linked here, like if you've got issues with someone and it's unresolved, you cannot get off the planet. So you have to keep reincarnating until. So the souls have been trying to get these, and they said to us, if we weren't on the planet, your planet would change overnight. There wouldn't be any problems. And they've described themselves as the circus freaks. They're the ones on the street that are walking with their heads down, the ones that look a bit odd, because their frequency is not for, they should be on other planets, basically. So what's happening is
people like that, yes.
Yeah. And you can look at someone, they look like they're from another world, So,
yes, they don't. Just their very presence feels. I hate the word wrong, but that's the closest way.
A little bit off. Yeah.
It's like you shouldn't be here, not in a bad way, but just this.
No. And they know that as well. And they come through when I'm doing healing and meditations, and they come through as a collective. So I've channeled quite a bit of information about them. So it's very interesting. That's what I'm saying. As healers and light workers, there's so much more work that's going on behind the scenes. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on this planet, and there's a lot of. And that's what
my hat off to light workers. I think you guys do an amazing job. Seriously.
Yeah, it's quite full on. It's quite full on, but it's also you just have to be conscious of it. And if you are open and you acknowledge, that's all you need to do, because that again creates space for again consciousness to move into your body. The reason the light does not spread on the planet is because we're so shut off from it. And actually, alignment modality in the module 2, we do a lot of the control mechanism removal that's been put in parts of the brain into the hypothalamus, different chakras. And what that happens, basically, that stops our stellar consciousness. It stops us, and it also causes human beings to capitulate unconsciously. So it feeds an ego with despair, causing you to divide, questioning everything. And we have a lot of energy of Mars from the conflict. Mars in our consciousness that's also trying to release. This is why deep down a lot of human beings are very sad, and there's a lot of nervousness. If you go deep into the soul body, there's a lot of anxiety and despair.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and this is what we're carrying as a collective. So that COVID was all about the grief. It's ancient grief. It's trying to find itself. So what a virus, what an emotion will do, for example, grief in this example, it will create a virus. It will mutate itself to create a virus to trigger the feeling in the person. So feelings manifest themselves as viruses when they're not acknowledged. And this is, so that's it on the higher level. Yes, there are people creating it, but that's what I said, the light and dark is the same energy. So you can have one agenda, but it's also another agenda.
This is how interesting. But okay. So Paul, as we wrap up now, I know we said to our audience, and you mentioned as well, that you had 2 channeled messages that you wanted to share with us today.
Yeah.
If you'd like to go ahead and do that now, I'm assuming this is in regards to just I suppose everything we've been speaking about and more.
Yes. Yeah, because the Christ consciousness was coming up. So I sort of channeled this the other day. So I basically asked the question, I'm just going to read it off from my notes. So basically I asked about the Christ consciousness. And this is what Spirit have said. Now, I also channel, it's called the Viridians. They're a consciousness of light beings. They're the ones that have, with my other colleague, have put together this body of work for us, and we're teaching it, and I'm also doing all their books for them. So this is from them as well. Okay. So the Christ consciousness, it is a formation of collective consciousness that is an expression of the feminine healing energy from the great mother force. It is expressed through many non-physical beings. It is a nurturing energy that supports and uplifts the receiver. It is there to assist a being who has lost touch with their innocence, who has lost trust in their divine self. It creates a sacred bubble around the auric field, enabling a being's consciousness to relax by then invoking inner self-communication. It is actually the great mother invoking the womb around a being so they feel safe and supported. They can then relax and access their actions and the right steps forward. In some cases, a rebirth, a chance to break the cycles of old. Much like a physical womb, feeling safe and nurtured before the physical journey ahead. Many beings support this thread of consciousness and not only give love through this thread, it is also a conduit for communication. To integrate this communication, a being needs to be relaxed and willing to surrender their control, to trust with no agenda. Christ energy is only received in a receptive state of non-attachment. If you are in fear and asking to be saved, you are coming with the wrong intention. If you trust and surrender, you will receive all that you need, without expectation or condition. This is primarily a feminine energy at this time in your consciousness. Let go of Jesus as a figurehead behind this energy. The Christ is the Son in your biblical terms, and the Son is always birthed from the feminine. So you need to flip this around, because Jesus is programmed in your consciousness as a savior, as a God to be worshipped. And this very analogy is actually what keeps you from accessing your own God self. If you allow others to save you without acknowledging your despair, you will continue to create more and more despair. So in truth, no one can save you but yourself. In surrender, you not only save yourself, but you enhance human consciousness by emanating the truth of your existence. You feed the despair in the human collective with love. You strengthen human collective consciousness by lighting the way for those that dwell in the shadow. Let go of wanting to be saved. The only savior is inward. So that's the first one.
Wow.
Got time for another?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. I might read off the Galactic Center. Okay. I'll just do the old Earth mentality. We are seeing around the globe. Hang on a second, sorry. We are seeing around the globe many beings holding on to an age that has now become redundant. And what humans are now discovering is the amount of energy they waste being caught up in the height of an illusionary world. The male energy over the next 6 months is on a path of surrender. And through next year, this surrender will integrate with the human evolution. Now, the male energy in whatever form needs love, and it needs support. It takes a brave soul to surrender to the feminine, and the more you can encourage men in your life, or your male side, to soften their approach, to take a step back where less is more, you will find a deep gratitude preceding this acknowledgement. Why? Because the male consciousness, as we know, is exhausted, but more importantly, wants balance and integration. And the feminine willpower is very strong, but very gentle, and can weave that energy in a way that supports instead of attacks. It can be a delicate matter, but what is important is your intention to assist the male or your own male energy, that it comes from the heart and not your judgment of the male behavior, and certainly not for your own benefit, i.e. get in your own way or way to control. Because the ego has been playing this game for far too long now, and it's time to be authentic in all your communication with each other. In actual fact, men are waiting to be approached in this matter. They want emotional understanding, emotional resonance with their intellect. And you will find a scared little boy in most cases. And if it's the male side dominant in a female, then it's most likely coming from survival or inadequacy. The feminine energy needs to be expressed with love and tenderness, because it's within the tenderness where the power resides. The energy is already powerful, so it doesn't need to be expressed with power or force. And the only way to express this powerful force is through tenderness, subtle and even childlike. So look around in your life, use your intuition, and the right men will reveal themselves that are ready. And if it's your male side dominant, then you need to soften your approach and give permission to the divine feminine to work through you and balance the two energies. And if you're listening to this, you're more than ready. So.
Love that. Oh, that's given me a lot to think about as well. Thank you for that.
No worries. Yeah, it's great.
Paul, thank you so much for taking time out to do this deep dive with us today, especially since you've not been feeling great. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
This has just been incredible, and I cannot wait for our next episode, because I've already got a ton of questions that I want to do some more deep dives on. So
absolutely. Yeah, I look forward to it.
Thank you so much to our listeners. As usual, Paul's contact details will be in the description of this video should you want to reach out and learn more about the alignment modality. Paul also, as you know, is a speaker on the Wellness Lifestyle Conference, and his past videos can be found on our channel. So please just do a quick search and you'll be able to see all the wonderful wisdom that he has shared with us over the last couple of months. Paul, thank you so much for your time, and I cannot wait for our next chat. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Cheers then.